Hello cave dwellers. I recently reviewed Sega Forever on Android and iOS. Aside from the poor emulation and touchscreen controls, the baked in ads were a constant bump back to reality, and it got me thinking about the whole experience of emulation. We emulate old games for different reasons, some to delve into a library of classic games they didn't experience first time around, and others, like me, to switch off from daily life and wallow in a happy nostalgic place with familiar classics. The success then of capturing that fuzzy feeling goes beyond the emulator and the game itself. It extends to your game controllers, choice of monitor, audio equipment and surroundings. Some of us opt to capture it in a build such as this RetroPie Game Gear I've been working on, or this mini gauntlet cabinet I put together some years back, and those are great at adding an extra layer of authenticity to the experience. If that is, you're fortunate enough to have access to the space and the tools required to put something like that together, let alone the patience. On these devices, the front end menus you use to access your game library needs to be functional, organised and swift to navigate. But what of those who like to dip into classic games using modern hardware, 4K monitors, RGB keyboards or virtual reality headsets, which were the stuff of science fiction when Pac-Man or Robotron were the height of gaming? Well, this is where the subject of today's review fills a niche, a coming together of the latest tech available today for the purpose of playing the oldest games. Come with me now then into New Retro Arcade Neon. Welcome to the neon world of New Retro Arcade Neon. It's a 3D emulator front end and slightly more for all your favourite arcade games and consoles. It's fully compatible with VR headsets and also playable with a keyboard, mouse and joypad. New Retro Arcade is available on Steam. In fact, it's in the sale at the moment when I purchased this. It's been around for about a year now, but I've resisted it until now because of early teething problems with frame rates and various other bugs. But developers persevered, and this is the result. A fully realised and interactive flashback to an 80s or 90s arcade. As we approach the first machines, let's take in some of those attract sounds. It may be a bit overwhelming for those who weren't there first time round, but I can assure you that's exactly what it was like. Arcade machines fighting for your attention and your money. The machines of course are all fully playable, and the choice of machines and artwork are all fully customisable. In fact, you're expected to get your hands dirty to use this because of the associated legalities of shipping with ROMs. There is however a very handy single download which can configure your arcade to look exactly like the one I'm showing you now, and I'll include a link to that in the description. This is one of my favourite shots from this video. The style just captures the period perfectly, from that carpet, the neon lit bowling alley in the background and the Street Fighter artwork and marquee here, complemented by the attract sound effects. It's not just the arcades that are playable. Bowling alleys, Whack-A-Rat and air hockey amongst others are available. Fully functional and set up for multiplayer play, which can be set up on the LAN or over the internet. Given the quality of that first bowl, I'm going to have to throw another one down the alley. There you go, as you can see it registers up on the screen here as well, just as you'd expect. The fun continues in another room with this laser tag themed rack, which is really in keeping with the theme. More funky carpet and some more classic machines up here then. We'll just take a walk around and see what we've got. The first one we've got here is Double Dragon, and Double Dragon 2 next to it, with that iconic soundtrack playing away. A couple of shoot 'em ups then in the corner with 1942 and Blazing Star. And then interestingly we've got Time Crisis, which is a light gun game, and I'll show you how that works a little bit later in this video. No arcade is complete without Paperboy, although strangely we're missing the handlebars on this cabinet. A limitation perhaps of the engine, I wouldn't be surprised. And another great moment as we move to the left then with that iconic RoboCop image, complemented behind us by the attract sound of a Michael Jackson cabinet. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is fully customizable, so chances are you'll have completely different machines in your arcade. But this should give you a good idea of the types of cabinet designs that you can have, the quality of the presentation, and just the overall effect of having those classic machines presented side by side in a way that I just haven't seen achieved in any other kind of front end. Now, all the arcades are fully playable, as we'll get to in a moment, as are these Game Boys which are dotted around the place, and a Super Nintendo which we'll get to. The arcades and the ROMs for all of the devices in this front end are configured using the Arcade Builder executable which comes with the package, with this particular Game Boy configured with Mega Man 3. The quality of the emulation is of course excellent because it falls back on those Liberetro cores, but if you intend to use this, do check the minimum and recommended system specs, more so to check you can enjoy the 3D experience at a smooth frame rate than the emulation itself. We move to the VIP room now to find the Super Nintendo on the table here, and scattered around it are your choice of ROMs that you've configured to be here. Now, the first challenge to playing the Super Nintendo is to get the cartridge in the slot. Easier said than done really, and if you've played this with a Oculus Rift or a HTC Vive, I'd be interested to hear how you find it navigating and operating the systems in this. Once the cartridge is in, you do have the option to zoom in to fill your screen a little bit more, but you still get those lovely CRT effects and reflections from around the room. It is of course not the setup you would choose if you were looking to set the next Twin Galaxies high score, but it adds a wonderful extra level of detail and depth to your emulation experience. And when you're finished playing, you simply turn around and walk away. Although it's worth mentioning that all of the systems can take advantage of the save state options in the various emulators, as well as maintaining the VRAM for high scores. And having played one cartridge, I did eventually find out how to change it and put the next one in, but not without throwing a few around the room first. Let us now travel back to those arcade machines and try some of those out. We'll start with something simple in Frogger. You'll notice the familiar MAME splash screen appear quickly there, and should you need it you can pop up the main menus that you're familiar with. With the keyboard and mouse I found there were 2 zoom levels to play the game at, but of course if you're playing with a VR headset you just stand as close or as far away as you're comfortable with. Even the simplest games like Frogger take on a different lease of life when in, I guess what's their natural habitat, surrounded by the attract sounds of other machines, the neon glare from the screen, and the scan lines of the CRT monitor. Let's visit some more machines quickly. Tekken 3 of course a slightly more challenging game to emulate, being 3D, but here the emulation runs fine. 3D emulation within a 3D front end. Light gun games then are an interesting addition. I recently had a fairly poor experience with an aim-track light gun, and you can find a review of that in my channel. But surprisingly, this method of playing light gun games with the mouse is strangely satisfying. And again, I'd like to know if somebody's played this with a VR headset, what your experience was with the light gun games. One last arcade then for you before we wrap this up, and of course it's RoboCop, that great side-scrolling classic. You'll notice on this one in particular the white and red and to the left slightly green reflections on the screen. Now, as if your own personal arcade which you could customise to suit wasn't enough, there's yet more hidden away inside this front end. Your own personal cinema. You can configure the front end with various VHS cassettes which are linked to YouTube links or your local files, so you can take a seat in virtual reality and watch your favourite movie.
Hey, you got a permit for those guns?
I've got your permit right here.
So that, ladies and gents, is my 10-minute quick tour of new retro arcade Neon. It's come a long way since it was first released, and it's a really interesting and immersive take on presenting and playing these old games. I think it's well worth a look, and do persevere if you get stuck on some of the customization. There is a good support group out there, especially on Reddit. The only complaint I have at the moment is that you can't create your own custom arcade from scratch, only customise the existing machines in the existing layout, and I really hope that that's something that they develop soon. I hope you've enjoyed touring this arcade with me, Cave Dwellers. As always, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and come back for more software and hardware reviews as well as hacks and retro adventures, and there's a new Patreon link on my YouTube page should you be so inclined to click it. Thanks for watching, Cave Dwellers, take care.